to Arsenal.
It was really good play. He was waiting for the challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, he's saying. Really intelligent play that is from Saka.
Cayo Saka, muchos minutos sin citarle, muchos minutos sin encarar. Alaba le lleva hacia posiciones interiores, persecución sostenida y mal resuelta. Le termina tocando David Alaba, falta peligrosísima.
Alaba darts out to Saka. And eventually the Austrian does foul him.
Oh, this is a long way to beat Thibaut Courtois from. Saka with a left foot, or Rice with a right foot. Saka puts his right foot, Saka his left.
Rice وساكا كرة رايس
It's a tremendous free kick.
Declan Rice s'élance.
Absolutely unstoppable.
Declan Rice le pega.
رايس وديجار بحثا عن هدفه الثالث رايس
Declan Rice! He plays it!
Rice.
Oh my God!
El segundo.
The first one was good. This one is better. Rice, baby.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra. Well, sort of an Arsecast Extra, maybe half an Arsecast Extra. As always, with James from Arseblog. James. Had to break out one of the jingles.
Well, listen, we got to check on the guy who hates Goodly Mornings.
Absolutely fuck that guy this morning.
He was found dead this morning. No, I don't know. But yeah, extraordinary. Wow, what a night.
How did you sleep?
Badly, and not very much.
Yeah.
Partly work related,
sure.
But yes. I've had about as many hours sleep as Arsenal beat Real Madrid by, roughly.
Right. I think we all know where you're coming from. It's extraordinary, isn't it, to be a fully grown up human adult person and to be so energized, excited. I don't know how. I mean, the amount of people I spoke to who are like, how am I supposed to sleep after that? What am I supposed to just lie there thinking about Declan Rice free kicks? Okay, I'll lie there and think about Declan Rice free kicks for a little while because those, it's like the glorious football equivalent of counting sheep going over the walls. You just go 1, 2, 1, 2. But I mean, I'm sure there are so many people listening to this as well who, whether they were at the game, whether they were watching on TV, wherever they were in the world, were just sort of like a jittery mess of emotion and happiness and excitement.
Absolutely. Every time you close your eyes, you see that screen grab of Declan Rice's free kick hitting the postage stamp in the corner between post and bar. It was extraordinary, and I do think difficult to... It should be declared a national holiday, really. Or not a national holiday, but an Arsenal holiday.
Just a holiday for Arsenal fans, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, before we get into the game, you were there. I haven't had a chance yet to look at your On the Whistle video because I've been trying to pull together all the audio bits and commentary for the intro for this particular episode, which I still have just a little bit to finish off after we finish recording. So I haven't had a chance, but I did notice the title, and we were talking a little bit. I can't remember if we were talking last night or not. I've never had my WhatsApp, by the way. My WhatsApp has never in my life blown up the way it did after that game. Honestly, it was just like ping, 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 ping. People like, oh my God, all these people they just want to sort of share in the moment. But you described it as the best night in the Emirates Stadium history. So just for the 60,000 of you that were there, and the vast majority of us weren't there, what was the experience like from the stands with your fucking fan hat on?
I did very much have my fan. I had a literal fan hat on. Not a hat with a fan in it, but an Arsenal hat.
Okay. That's a bit disappointing.
Yeah. I look, whenever you say something like that, it's the greatest night in the stadium's history, people might accuse there of being a bit of recency bias there. And who knows, maybe whether I'll stand by that in the fullness of time, I don't know. Certainly this morning, I feel like that is the case. And the reason I feel that so strongly is that I think if you rewind 30 years or 25 years and you imagine Arsene Wenger sat in a room with people like David Dein, Danny Fiszman, the Arsenal board at the time.
Sure.
I think when they conceived of the Emirates Stadium, this is the kind of night that they dreamt of, which is Arsenal hosting Real Madrid with 60,000 fans in the ground with players who cost £100 million on the pitch for us, combining with players who cost us nothing out of the academy and winning handsomely. I do think that that's the dream, right? And we haven't won a trophy at the Emirates Stadium. We haven't won a league title there and celebrated it with the fans. We've never brought back a Champions League as yet, and the stadium's only existed for a couple of decades. But I just think this is sort of the moment that they hoped they would get, and it might have taken a lot longer than they would have planned or desired. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really special night. Really special night. And as a fan, my experience, I left my flat quite late because I had to hand over childcare duties to my wife who was coming back from work. So I got into the ground about 20 to 8. I've got to say that I knew it was going to be a good night when I saw friend of the show, Neil, in the concourse beforehand, and he managed to put enough pint glasses on top of each other to reach all the way from the floor to the ceiling. And I was like, if he can do that, anything is possible.
And they were just his. We're not talking about anybody else here.
Perhaps so, yeah. He was actually stood on one of the little bars with this leaning tower of plastic pint glasses. Yeah. And honestly, I was like, well, now we know it's a special night.
Yeah.
Then I got out into the concourse, and it was into the stadium itself, rather. And the first thing you noticed was that it was full. Arsenal had made a big thing about, we want you in the ground early. Mikel Merino said, we want you in the ground for the warm-up. Don't know if that was ever particularly likely given London traffic and transport and all those things. But it was certainly full from about 10 minutes before kickoff. And then did they televise much of what went on before the game? There was a light show and some pyrotechnics.
They didn't really, because I was watching on Premier Sports in Ireland. They might have had it differently on Amazon. I'm not 100% sure. You could see bits of it, but you didn't see a great deal. I wasn't really into the sort of build-up myself because I was sort of on the edge of nerves and excitement and things like that. So I just sort of was doing my pre-game prep for the live blog, and I sat there, and then when the teams were in the tunnel, I turned it on and watched that kind of stuff.
I have to say, hats off to the club. I think it's easy to be critical when the club kind of puts things in place to augment the atmosphere. We've all been at Wembley when they're just blaring pop music the entire time in an attempt to sort of stir up some atmosphere. I think the club pitched it really well in terms of doing things that kind of supplemented and encouraged the crowd to be there, to be present, to be behind the team without overriding them. We had the red and white display, which was looked spectacular, certainly from where I was stood.
Yeah,
in the
looked
North Bank.
great, yeah.
They had the two tifos, Thierry Henry will have enjoyed seeing a giant replica of himself in the clock end. And then the message on the east, over the lower east stand, make it happen, which I think was a message as much to the fans as the players on the club's behalf. And yeah, the atmosphere was great. I mean, it was a really intense game.
Yeah.
Almost particularly in the first half. Although it was 0-0, it was just so absorbing and draining. And there were moments naturally of kind of tension in the stands and when it was a little bit quieter. But any time the crowd could rally around the team, I think they did.
Yeah.
And I think everyone who was there slightly had that sense of knowing that potentially they were witnessing a historic night. You know, I've never... Talk about your WhatsApp popping off on the night. My WhatsApp's been popping off over the last month or so, or whatever it's been, for people trying to get tickets from me, you know, saying, who do you know? How can you help? And unfortunately, most of the time I can't. But everyone wanted to be in that ground.
Sure.
So, yeah, and then obviously you get to the second half and the goals go in and it's just bedlam. I mean, the first one, I think there was sort of delight and shock. And then by the second and third... just sort of madness and disbelief, really.
Well, let's sort of work our way back around to that, because obviously it's it's the story of the game. 2 unbelievable free kicks. Just sort of talking about the specialness of the night, I think the game that maybe it gets compared to most is the Barcelona game, the Arshavin game, when he scored that winning goal. And that was a huge moment because that Barcelona team was incredible. And, you know, we were who we were at that point, right? We had some hope, we had some optimism, but we weren't, you know, the best iteration of Arsenal. I think that game, and I could be remembering it wrong, but I do slightly get the sense it was a bit more of a smash and grab, right? Against Barcelona. Whereas I think when you look at this game and when you try and put the two games against each other, for whatever reason you might want to do that, or to try and gauge which was the best night from an Arsenal perspective, I think the overall performance last night was by some distance better than that night against Barcelona. It was the kind of performance I think that we had all hoped for. Maybe in your wildest dreams you thought we might be able to do something like that, but that's kind of where it existed. You know, the weirdness of football is such that, you know, we had a 1-1 draw against Everton at the weekend, and the performance was like, okay. And there was a sort of like a bit of frustration, some indifference because of the context of that game. But then you immediately transport yourself to a game that matters, that has jeopardy, that has stakes, that has something riding on it. And Arsenal pull out a performance like this with all the issues and all the troubles that we have had. And I think everybody knows what they are, so they don't need us to go into them again. So when you let's say try and compare those two performances, you know, where does this performance rank on that scale? Do you see this as just a much more complete display from Arsenal against, you know, really, really, really good opposition?
I do, yeah. I mean, listen, that Barcelona team were extraordinary, and we were at a different place in our trajectory at that time. I think that had more the flavour of an upset. You know, I think last night was an upset. Real Madrid were the favourites, but they were quite consummately and completely beaten by us. I think that one, like you said, was a bit more of a smash and grab, and there was maybe more surprise than anything else from us in what we actually produced. I think crucially as well, over the two legs, you know, that result didn't ultimately give us a platform to progress, and I don't take anything for granted at the Bernabeu because it has a kind of, you know, dark magic that's quite closely affiliated with the Champions League. But this, as a result, obviously gives us a huge platform. But I just think even the way Real Madrid tried to play was kind of interesting in that, you know, it felt like they were prepared to play cat and mouse and sit in and try and hit us on the break. You know, there was a respect in the way that they played, which showed that I think we are arriving. It's very difficult because we're at this place in our history where we haven't won the big prizes in recent years. And so I think the way we're perceived and the way we're discussed is often sort of seen through that prism.
Yeah. That was something I was going to ask you about that, about what you thought about the way Real Madrid set up against us. Just to very quickly, team selection, the question of who was going to start in place of Gabriel. There was maybe some talk of Ben White, but it was Jakub Kiwior he went with in the end. Bukayo Saka starting for the first time. I think that was a boost. I think that played into the atmosphere, I'm sure, just this sort of talismanic figure back on the pitch after a big injury for the biggest game of the season, the biggest atmosphere. I think he was certainly part of it, and we'll talk about his contribution obviously as well. But what I thought was fascinating was what you just said, that there was respect from Real Madrid. And, they are a very, I don't know if scary is the right word, but there is a sort of terrifying snake-like speed to the way in which they do things. That you think you're okay. You think everything's all right. And then all it takes is like just one moment, one pass, like that Bellingham chance or Mbappe chance rather, set up by the Bellingham pass. They just sort of won the ball, quickly moved it from halfway, and Mbappe's through. And like Kiwior is quick, but Mbappe you can't catch him, and Raya made the save. So that sort of threat, whenever they got forward, you've got Rodrigo, you've got Vinicius Jr., you've got Mbappe, you've got Bellingham. You have to be so conscious of that, and you have to be aware of that and try not to get exposed. And I think for the most part, Arsenal did that pretty well. There were a couple of mistakes early on, weren't there? First touch for Kiwior was not great, and then there was the Saka mistake, which we defended. But, aside from that, when we had the ball, you could see that Real Madrid knew they were up against a good team, that the way they set up out of possession tells you that they viewed Arsenal as very, very strong opposition. Yeah,
they dropped into a 4-4-2, really.
Yeah.
Something we do ourselves a lot away from home. And yeah, they did play with respect. I mean, Mbappe and Vinicius are players, when you're watching them, you can never quite relax. I have to say, watching Mbappe, it is sometimes like watching Thierry Henry. There are so many parallels, aren't there? In the way they move, the kind of grace they play with, the confidence. And they have that kind of rattlesnake strike in their locker. So even at 0-0 and in situations where we were seemingly on top and creating chances, there was that kind of latent anxiety of, one mistake could kill us here. I kept thinking of the Atletico Madrid semi-final.
Yes.
Which was a similarly intense, close game where we had moments where we probably should have scored more goals, and then we got punished really late on by Griezmann, and I had that sort of fear in me that, for most of the game.
Sure. I mean, I'm just looking back at the live blog here, and in the 7th minute, I say, this game is mad already. Because there were the two mistakes that I talked about from an Arsenal perspective, but then there was Rudiger clearing the ball off. I can't remember. Might have been Camavinga. It went just wide of the post.
Yeah.
There was a Partey header that was cleared off the line by Saliba. Courtois got a hand on a corner from Saka and just sort of pawed it away. And, that first half was really, really, really high quality, high entertainment, high octane football all the way through. A lot of Arsenal games this season haven't really been that, for whatever reason, for various reasons. Whether it's the opposition, whether it's some of the things that we've been missing. But from the start, this was like, if not necessarily two guys going toe-to-toe and slugging it out, there was clear intent from both sides, wasn't there? Like, you could probably make a good case before the game that a 0-0 draw here isn't a bad result for Arsenal, to go to the Bernabeu, keep it tight, etc., etc. And I think part of the way we set up was to try and ensure that we didn't get caught out. But such is their quality, they're going to cause you problems. But I was really, really impressed with the way we caused them problems as well. Partey had a shot from the edge of the box. I think it was set up by Merino. There were moments when perhaps a better pass here or there could have got us a little further up the pitch. But all the while, you're sort of looking at what they can do, and what they can do at pace, and it's extremely difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and there were a couple of moments. Vinicius curled one wide. Raya had that chance that you mentioned where he went. Sorry, not Raya. Mbappe had that chance where he went through and the shot was too close to Raya. So that threat was always there. I was at the other end from an Arsenal perspective. I was behind the goal. They were defending in that half. So I haven't had the best view of it yet, but there were those two moments where Bukayo Saka sort of flashed crosses through the penalty area. Yeah. You will have seen them better than me, but at those moments I thought, oh God, we're going to have the number 9 narrative all over again here. There was just nobody there to put them away. Yeah, I mean, that's true.
It was one of those when the ball is there, the first thing you're thinking of is like, we need the fox in the box. We need that guy who's going to attack, the 6-yard box and just slide in and provide those tap-ins. But I think that those moments were really interesting for me because I think that was when Saka started to come to life a little bit. He'd been involved, obviously, and I thought it was interesting how willing we were or determined we were to get the ball to him when perhaps we weren't quite as willing to do it on the other side, where I thought maybe we could have got Martinelli into the game a little quicker at times. But I think it's just the fact that it's Bukayo Saka. You give him the ball and you know that he's more than capable of producing something. But I think those two low crosses, one I think Courtois got a hand on, the other one deflected off a defender and just sort of went behind Martinelli, who was, I think, coming in at the back post. But it did show that Saka was capable of making an impact. And that, for me, was a big element of this performance. Like, what were we going to get from Bukayo Saka? Because we got 45 minutes against Everton where he wasn't really that involved. He got on the ball a bit, but you could say primarily it was a 45 minutes where he played 45 minutes to set himself up for this game rather than being massively impactful against Everton. Yeah, I actually think he wasn't at his absolute best, his absolute sharpest, but then it's kind of impossible for him to be. And he still carried enough threat. I think his presence on the pitch, as you said, was a lift to the crowd, to the team, to everybody. Gave Real Madrid something to think about, that's for sure. And I think he did grow into it as that first half went on. And, on another night might have made the telling contribution with those low crosses across the box. We did have we did go very close, didn't we, right towards the end of the first half. Julian Timber, I think, crossed, and then Declan Rice and Gabriel Martinelli, both denied by Thibaut Courtois. I think, it's worth pointing out at this point that Courtois' quality was evident, really evident, on both of those chances. The Rice header and the save from Gabriel Martinelli, right? And I think it's worth just noting that when we talk about what happens in this second half and what Declan Rice did and would have to do to beat a goalkeeper of that quality. Well, I mean, that's the extraordinary thing about the win. I watched an interview with Jude Bellingham and he was saying Arsenal could have scored way more than 3. Yeah. And when you think about those saves Courtois made, he made that remarkable succession of saves in the second half too, denying, was it Merino? Merino, yeah. His reactions to get up and make saves off rebounds are really something. He's been one of Madrid's, maybe even their best player this season. He's been in outstanding form. So we had a goalkeeper who was going to be difficult to beat. Yeah. Fortunately, we had something special in store for him. Well, now that we're here, we might as well go to the second half. I think there was a chance for Mbappe, a really quick in the side netting move. It's just another one of those where you're going, how have they done that so quickly? Hit the side netting. I think Saliba was there. There was almost a chance for Declan Rice. Myles Lewis-Skelly played the ball into him in the box and he took it, but couldn't quite bring the ball with him. Mm-hmm. Which I guess would have been sort of right in front of you at that point. A little bit unlucky, but a great pass from Lewis-Skelly, who I absolutely want to talk to you about in a second. But then Bukayo Saka wins a free kick. little right of centre, foul by David Alaba. How many times have we talked about free kicks on this podcast?
Many, many times.
Many times. How many times have we said we think, Declan Rice ought to be taking those free kicks? Listen, did we not say it? Because of the way he takes a dead ball, a set piece, a corner kick, he just seems the most... if it's not Bukayo Saka with his left foot, Declan Rice seems like the right guy to take them because he's got the precision, the power, etc., etc. But as they said on TV last night, 339 professional games for Declan Rice, for club and country. Not one direct free kick scored. So when Saka went down, I'll admit I had hope, but I did not have a great deal of expectation.
Well, how could you? Given his record, but given Arsenal's record, September 2021, since we last scored a direct free kick.
Wow.
A long time ago. And so, yeah, I don't blame you. And it's Arsenal were setting up for like a clipped cross to the back post. That was what the set piece coach was indicating for.
Don't listen to that guy. That's what I say.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what Real Madrid were anticipating. Set pieces were a big factor going into the game. Madrid have suffered on them this season. They've struggled to deal with corners and free kicks into the box. And we saw that at times, even in the first half. There were a couple of moments where you could see just a little bit of panic beneath the surface. And I wonder how much that played into what followed. Their anxiety or their concern with, they're going to clip this to the back post where they've got all those big tall players running at goal. Maybe that factored into their preparation, because I've read a lot of criticism, and this is to take nothing away from Declan Rice, but I've read a lot of criticism of the wall and how they set up.
I think that is doing Declan Rice a bit of a disservice, to be honest. Genuinely. I think they would have been, if they were worried about Arsenal from set pieces, have been worried about that kind of routine, or maybe a corner or a free kick from out wide where we get the ball in the box and we've got those big guys. I don't think they would have been that worried about the possibility of Arsenal firing home from that kind of distance. I can see.
That's what I'm saying. I wonder if Declan Rice had done this against Everton, would they have put another man in the wall and not at the back post? Potentially. I don't think they saw this coming, and who can blame them?
No, but at the same time, it takes an extraordinarily good free kick from Declan Rice to actually get the ball around the wall, curl it inside or outside the wall. It starts way outside the post. I mean, it's just an incredibly good free kick. It is one of the best free kicks you will ever see until maybe the next free kick that we score. You're sort of there going, oh wow, Jesus, when am I ever going to see a free kick that good again from an Arsenal player? And we didn't have to wait that long, right? But I do think it does Rice a disservice. If you want to criticize Real Madrid for the wall, fine, but I think he still has to start that 4 or 5 feet outside the post, around the wall with power, curling it back in and inside the post. Yeah, I'm not having any real wall criticism of Madrid. I think it's just a brilliant, brilliant free kick from Rice.
Yeah, okay. I think it's both, to be honest. I do think it's odd. I think they went a man light in their wall, but it's still an unbelievable free kick. An unbelievable free kick.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's right out of the David Beckham school.
Bend it like Declan is all they kept saying on TV last night.
It's very good. I do think it's... Mikel Arteta said after the game, he was like, I feel like the crowd played their part in making something special happen there. And I think that's very generous of him. But I think this is much more about Declan Rice. I do think that some players just have a special capacity to influence games and big moments. And he has that innately. It's partly why he cost quite as much money as he did. This is a guy who led West Ham to a European trophy because he is just one of those footballers who has that sense of destiny that hangs around him and a capacity to kind of seize the moment. And I don't think it's coincidence that, when Arsenal needed a late winner against Manchester United within his first few weeks arriving at the club, he was there at the back post to put it away. When they needed something against Luton in the dying seconds of the game, he pops up in the penalty area to head home. And when they needed something to beat, arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the world in a Champions League quarter-final, he manages to curl home the first free kick of his career. I just think he's a special player. And I think this was a big night for him. We speak about this is the night the stadium was built for and designed for. But this is the kind of night he came to Arsenal for. This is why he made that move. And he's up against Jude Bellingham. We're at a point in the, it's not the concern of Arsenal fans, where England's under new management, a new coach, a new direction, and there's probably an ongoing conversation behind closed doors about whose team is this? Who do we give the keys to the midfield? Who's the main man that we build around? And look, they're both exceptional players, but last night it was very much all about Declan Rice.
Yeah, for sure. A brilliant, brilliant free kick. It's one that looks better with every viewing. When you see the reverse angle, you see how far it starts outside and curls back in. Just so unbelievably pleasing. And I think part of what made last night special was how special the first two goals were. The fact that you score a goal like that kind of out of the blue, a goal nobody really expected Arsenal to score. Like if we'd scored a scrappy Mikel Merino header at the back post, people would be going, yep, that's Arsenal. But not that kind of free kick.
Well, set piece FC, Andrew.
Well, not all set pieces, unfortunately, until last night. But we've added that string to our bow. But then to sort of ice the cake, if you like, with another one, made it feel kind of otherworldly. I don't know what it was like in the stadium. I mean, I can imagine. I was trying to imagine moments that I could compare it to in that sort of sense of, what's the word? Not surreal, but sort of like this sense of disbelief. I can't believe what I'm seeing here. And what came to mind was the game against Tottenham when I think Van Persie scored, and then Fabregas scored straight from the kickoff. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where you're going like, oh my, we've just scored against, and now this, what the fuck is happening? This is amazing. And it's the sort of rare nature of scoring two free kicks in any game, but two free kicks of that quality in the one game added to that sense of like, this is really, really special. I mean, I said this in the blog today, is like I sort of go between which one I think is the better free kick, whether it's the first one or the second one. I think you have to like look at them like your children. You love them both equally, but differently. This was extraordinary again. Yeah. Extraordinary. Like on Premier Sports, as Gary Breen is on co-commentary, and he just screams, "Oh my God!" and has nothing to say after that. The commentator picks it up, and it's just one of those moments. And as you say, it went in the very, very top corner. People talk about top corner all the time. That is top corner. There's no debate as to whether or not that is top corner. Again, power, precision to beat Courtois, who's on that side or should be on that side. I mean, sensational. Like a fucking FIFA free kick. I don't know how to put it into words. What a piece of play that was from Declan Rice.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal to see it happen like that. And I confess, actually, there's a video on my Instagram when he was lining up to take it. I thought, I'll just put my camera on here, which is kind of mental anyway, to be like, it's a free kick from 30 yards out and he's only scored one free kick in his career. But I did just have that feeling. And I think everyone in the ground had that feeling of, well, why not? Why not have a go? I mean, it's exceptionally difficult to score a free kick, as we have proven over the last 4 years. To score 2 in a single game, and a game of that magnitude against a keeper of that standard, it's once in a career stuff.
Yeah.
However good you are, you know. I mean, I spoke about David Beckham, or take any free kick expert you like, Juninho of Lyon.
Yeah.
2 in a game is a big ask. An Arsenal player has done it in recent history. Don't know if you recall, but Nicola Pepe came off the bench to score 2 free kicks against Vitoria Guimarães in a very different calibre of European fixture.
Mm-hmm.
But an incredibly rare thing to see. I think this is the better free kick, actually. I just think the power with which he hits this, the accuracy, the difficulty of going keeper's side and still landing it in that top corner and it being utterly unsavable. There's a little mini Arsenal wall on this one who sort of scatter as Rice runs up to it. And again, it's kind of powered by that confidence that you just cannot fake. You know, the first free kick is still coursing through his veins when he hits the second one. And there is a kind of alchemy and magic in that. If he'd got a third shortly afterwards, he probably would have put it top bins as well. The way it was going.
Yeah. You wouldn't have put it past him. I was doing the sort of audio mixing a little bit earlier, right? And I caught this bit. I think it could have been on one of the English language ones, right? I'm not sure if you can hear it. I've tried to isolate this, and this is absolutely genuine. As Rice and Saka are standing over the ball, the mics pick up this person. See if you can hear what they say. I don't know if you could hear that, but it's a guy going, "Come on, Declan, smash it." You can just hear him on the mics in the background there. So.
Yeah. I remember in the sort of aftermath of that second goal, which sort of in the aisle of the North Bank where I was kind of end of days stuff. You know, people just climbing on top of each other, crying, hugging. A lot of people were just saying, "What is going on? Like, what is happening?" There was this feeling of like, we are caught in this supernatural event. It was bedlam, like I say. Limbs, I believe.
I mean, I had texts from people going, "What's going on here? What's happening? Why? How are we doing this?" Those kinds of things, because I think it is so far removed from what your hopes are, your expectations are for a game like this. But you know,
it's interesting. You know what you said about the sort of the type of goal. Like if Arsenal had scored their first 2 goals off a different set piece, like if they had been scored from corners, weirdly, I think in the wider football consciousness, there'd be people sort of slightly scoffing at that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you know, when you smash it into the top corner from 30 yards, even though it's not from open play, I think people have to sort of sit back and go, well, that's a moment of exceptional quality.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, if a Real Madrid player had scored those goals, people would be talking, you know, what a brilliant player they were, what quality they have, you know, big game character, personality, all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. And that's all true of Declan.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Well, you know, it would be true if a Madrid player scored that goal. It's true, you know, of an Arsenal player who scored those 2 goals. I think just quickly before we move on to the third goal, a mention for Bukayo Saka, who, you know, obviously got a bit of a knock in that second one, but won both those free kicks with the kind of positive ball at his feet play that, you know, we haven't, not saying we haven't had it, but he has it maybe at a different level from the players who filled in for him over the last few months.
Yeah, and there was one, I forget which free kick it was, where he's kind of dribbling horizontally across the pitch. And
I think that's the first one, yeah.
Yeah, have a few stabs at getting him down, and they eventually manage it. And I think it was really smart play as well, because, you know, by that point in the game, I think perhaps he didn't necessarily have the burst to go outside, to go beyond, but he thought, well, I can carry the ball and I can give Madrid a problem. So, yeah, he did really well. He played longer than I thought he would, and he must be delighted. I mean, he spoke the day before about how the physios would mention this fixture to him a lot during his rehab and his comeback, and it was all kind of geared up to this game. So the sense of achievement to be ready to start to contribute must be enormous.
Yeah, for sure. And, questions before, I'm sure you saw the clip of, him being asked, how far does he think he has to go to get the levels of Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr.? Hang on a second here, buddy. This is Bukayo Saka's home turf, where he has shown, exceptional quality over a prolonged period of time. Does it, have the glamour and the stature of Real Madrid? No. But does it make him any less a player? Absolutely not. So I'm sure he will have gone off that pitch happy with his contribution to the 2 goals that Declan Rice scored. Rice involved in the third one as well. Trossard came on for Saka. He was involved in the move. Lewis-Skelly with a ball across the box. This, for all the talk of needing a centre forward, and look, we do, everyone knows it, but I think this is really, really smart play from Mikel Merino. If you look at the movement, he sort of makes a move forward, steps back in order to receive the pass from Lewis-Skelly, left foot shot. I think if you're looking at a seasoned centre forward making that kind of movement in the box and producing that kind of finish, you're saying, yeah, that's what we expect from you. I think it's a really good goal from Merino.
Brilliant finish, I think. Don't shout at me, guys, because I wanted us to sign a striker, and I think we should have done. But if we had signed one, if we'd signed Mikel Merino as one, if you see what I mean, we would be thrilled with what he's doing. I think it's unbelievable how well he's contributing in that position, given that he's never played there before. The application he's showing, the intelligence, I think is a big part of it. And that's one of the qualities that made Mikel Arteta want to sign him, that this is a guy who's always willing to learn and willing to follow instructions, sometimes too willing, I think. And that's, why they sprung it on him, the surprise of you're playing up front tomorrow as a sub. But he's been excellent. And I think this will have been a huge moment for him as well, against Real Madrid as a Spaniard. Yeah, capped it. And again, just added to that sense of because 3-0 is fairy tale stuff, 2-0
you're going that's amazing, but 3-0, that really was the icing on the cake kind of goal, wasn't it? To give you that bit of freedom to enjoy the final stages of the game. And obviously being 3-0 up in any event is a brilliant thing and a thing to enjoy and everything else, but it just gives you a little bit of a safety net.
Yeah, and I think, when we hosted Madrid in 2006, the home leg was 0-0, I think I'm right in saying.
Yes.
And there was a point in the first half where I was thinking, well, maybe we're headed towards a draw here. Maybe it's going to be 0-0 or we'll score and they'll hit us on the break. And I was kind of thinking, well, that's not, it's not a disastrous result. It's creditable and we would have given a good account of ourselves. A few people said to me, do you think we need to win tonight? I was like, to progress, yeah, maybe we need to win. But in my head, I was thinking, I could sneak a 1-0.
Just
maybe.
don't lose. Yeah.
2-1. Maybe if we're lucky, a 2-0, wouldn't that be incredible? I don't think I quite ever allowed myself to think it'll be Arsenal 3, Holders Real Madrid 0. I don't think that was one of the scenarios I planned upon.
No, I definitely didn't.
Yeah, and so to watch it unfold was surreal and brilliant, and I was really happy for everybody because I think there's a huge catharsis in it around the season. I think a lot of frustration has built, I'm sure, among the players, and I know among the fans, about injuries for sure, suspensions, transfer windows, going out of cup competitions, just feeling like it's not been our year, that we haven't had the breaks, that everything you could envisage going against us has gone against us. And I just think what happened last night means it wasn't all for nothing.
Do you think it's a reminder? Look, I know frustration has been part of our experience this season for all the reasons you mentioned, some of it out of our control, some of it in our control. And I think maybe the most acute frustration is the sense that we could have offset some of the things that were out of our control by doing more, that we didn't do certain things that maybe we could have, we chose not to, blah, 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 which I get, right? But do you think last night was a reminder, and maybe a timely reminder, that this team has come a really long way? And there's a lot to like about this group of players. A lot to love about them, actually, and the manager and the standards that we've set and the standards that we're aiming for, the ambition that we have. And we've fallen short. There's no two ways about it. But I got the sense that, for some people, it felt like end of days stuff, right? And I'm not here to police how anybody feels or anything like that. I get it. You feel how you feel. Your expectations are where they are. And if we fall short, that's painful. And you can react whatever way you want to react. But I said this to Andrew Allen before we were going, or he headed off to the game yesterday. We were chatting and I was going, this is the second quarterfinal of the Champions League in 2 years. Last year was our first year back in the Champions League. We got to the quarterfinal. We were beaten by a single goal by Bayern Munich. And here we are again in the quarterfinals. And even when we were in the Champions League routinely, year after year after year, something, that we grew accustomed to. I'm not going to say took for granted, but we grew accustomed to being in the Champions League. We sort of got into this cycle of, well, we're going out in the round of 16 to Bayern or Barcelona. Or if, to add a slight bit of variety every now and again, we'll fuck it up against, was it Monaco? So the Champions League has been an underwhelming thing for Arsenal, despite a long history in it and everything else. But here we are, in our second quarterfinal inside a year, and we've beaten Real Madrid 3-0, and we've got a 70% fit Bukayo Saka. We don't have Ben White fully fit. We don't have Gabriel. We don't have Kai Havertz. We don't have Gabriel Jesus. We've had to really dig deep with injuries. We've got an 18-year-old playing at left back, and I do want to talk about him now in a second, that the raw ingredients are there. There is a lot to like. We can do better. We can improve. But I think we showed people last night, not just Arsenal fans, but maybe the wider football world, that there really is something to this Arsenal team, both in terms of the individual quality and the collective desire, character, personality, whatever way you want to say it. And yeah, it's only half time in this game and there's a lot still to do. But I really think last night was, if not a defining moment, I think it was a really important moment in the context of our season, that we haven't done what we needed to do or wanted to do, but don't fucking write us off.
Well, also, I think it's about taking a step back and looking at where you've come from and where you are now.
Yeah.
I mentioned those two Pepe free kicks. They were in 2019, a couple of months before Mikel Arteta took the helm, and we were in the Europa League at that time. We weren't even in the Champions League. We even dropped out of that at one stage. And the way in which we've come back, the way in which the whole club is transformed. And again, I would talk about the fans, the atmosphere, the mood, the team itself. It's been a huge sweeping transformation. And I think football analysis being what it is and football discourse being what it is, every game is a referendum, and we're part of that as well. We analyse everything to the nth degree. We look always at what we could have done better, how every situation could have been avoided. Would this player be injured if they'd been rested then? Would we have lost that game if we bought this player? And that's all fine and fair, and we enjoy it. But you do have to take a step back sometimes and realise how far you've come.
Yeah.
And I think this game really serves as a reminder of that. And if you were, looking at the trajectory of this club over the last 5.5 years, that line's only going one direction.
Yes.
There are little undulations along the way, but the trend is incredibly clear. And I mentioned us having not won anything and how I think that affects how we get discussed and talked about. We hear a lot in the media about what Arsenal can't do. or what Arsenal don't do. But I do think that as fans, we should take this opportunity to recognise what we have done and what we continue to do. So yeah, it was a really wonderful night, and I think whatever happens going forward, I think we will be talking about this night and this game in 10, 20 years' time.
Sure.
I think it will be right up there in the kind of Emirates Stadium Hall of Fame.
How do you view it in the context of the second leg before we talk about Lewis-Skelly for a couple of minutes? I think if Real Madrid win this game 3-0, everybody says that's it. Job done, tie over.
Yeah.
I don't feel, maybe that's just natural worry or whatever it is. I don't feel like that's necessarily the case for us, because maybe we still have something to prove. But, if you flipped it the other way, nobody will be giving Arsenal a chance in the second leg. But, of course, it is at the Bernabeu. They do have this history. It is an incredibly strong position for Arsenal to be in. But I don't think you can confidently say that this is tie over just by virtue of the quality that they have. And as we enjoyed last night, the randomness of football is something you can't really factor into what happens, because for as amazing as it was, for Declan Rice to do what he did in those moments was extraordinary, and in the very literal sense of the word, it was extraordinary. It was out of the blue, etc., etc. So you don't quite know what can happen in the second leg, but we should be able to go there, I think, confidently, based on what we did last night, not just with the goals that we scored, but how we played and how we, for the most part, controlled big areas of the pitch in which Real Madrid, I think, struggled. Maybe midfield, when you've got a 39-year-old Modric in there, you are a little bit hampered, a little bit limited physically in that area of the pitch as well.
Yeah. I think any other team, any other stadium, I'd probably be saying we're through. But I spoke about those dark winds of magic that swirl around the Bernabeu at times. And in my sort of sleepless night last night, I kept having flashbacks of this interview. Like Kylian Mbappe was headed out through the mixed zone and getting on the Real Madrid bus, and a reporter, I think it was Guillermo Rai, actually, of the Athletic, sort of says to him in Spanish, can Real Madrid, Kylian, can Real Madrid progress? And he turns and looks at the camera. He looks almost affronted at the question, and he just says, "Sí, claro, of course." And there is a sort of a crazy arrogance in his shrug of course we can. It's Real Madrid. But look, we couldn't have dreamed of a better position to be in.
No.
And equally, you would say, if there is a team that can shut up shop and defend a lead in Europe, it might well be this Arsenal team. I mean, have we been beaten by 3 goals this season? I don't think so. Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It is, poised very positively for Arsenal, but you cannot, even in those last sort of 10, 12 minutes of the game where, if Real Madrid had scored, I think it would have not spoiled the night, but it just would have made the sensation a bit different this morning, because you would have had much more doubt about the second leg, I think, and I think we dealt with them very, very well, by the way. Once we were 3-0 up, we didn't do anything particularly adventurous. We tried a few things here or there, but we all just worked really hard to deny them time and space on the ball. Of course, they'll be without Camavinga, who was booked, and that was a suspension for the booking anyway, but a red card towards the end.
The ball away. We don't want to see that, Andrew.
Don't want to see that. But I do want to see that actually in the second leg for Mbappe in about the 5th minute, if that would be okay. But yeah, it's an amazing position to be in. I've threatened to talk about Myles Lewis-Skelly because, listen, I think this was an incredible collective effort. A real team team performance, right? And I think there were brilliant performances from back to front all the way through. And we've talked about Declan Rice, obviously, as a guy who caught the eye because of the goals that he scored. And Mikel Merino scored a goal, so fair play to him. I just think collectively every single player on that pitch deserves a huge amount of credit. But I was reminded of the Bernabeu in 2006. Right, and Thierry Henry scored the goal, and everybody was, going wild about that goal because of the quality of it, obviously. But I remember very clearly the Spanish press were far more focused on a young guy in the Arsenal midfield than the Thierry Henry goal, and that was Cesc Fabregas that night. And it was portrayed as this sort of coming of age performance from Fabregas, the former Barcelona kid who's at Arsenal. I think he was maybe 18 at the time. He'd probably been in the team a little bit longer than Myles Lewis-Skelly has been in the team for Arsenal, but it was this coming-of-age performance at the Bernabeu. Look at how he did against this incredible Madrid team full of Galacticos as they were back then. And, that was the story. That was the story. And last night, I think you have to look at Myles Lewis-Skelly and just give that young man all the credit and praise that he deserves. Only Saliba and Partey had more touches of the ball. 95% pass completion from Lewis-Skelly, and he wasn't operating as a left back. He was operating in midfield. I think he was brave on the ball. He passed it brilliantly. To be as good as that in a game like this at 18 years of age against opposition like this at this stage of the Champions League is unbelievable. It's just a sensational performance from Lewis-Skelly, and I think it deserves talking about.
100%. I really love this player. I mean, there are certain footballers you come across where something about their style or their personality just chimes with you. And Myles Lewis-Skelly is absolutely that for me. I love the courage that he shows on the pitch. And listen, I don't think I'm alone in that. I think many Arsenal fans feel exactly the same. But you were reminded of 2006 and Cesc Fabregas in the Bernabeu. I was reminded, I must say, a bit of Jack Wilshere.
That's fair. Yeah.
In 2011 against Barcelona, surrounded by world-class talent and just seizing the game by the scruff of the neck and showing them what he's all about. Jack's been a mentor to Myles through his career, coached him in the academy, and I feel like he's emulated him in some ways. Jamie Carragher's not the most popular man among Arsenal fans, and I understand the reasons why, but I thought he actually nailed it in his coverage on CBS. He said that Myles has a football arrogance which compares with Jude Bellingham or Wayne Rooney at a similar age. I think that's spot on. I think he has an unwavering self-belief that is so unusual in someone of that age, and a sort of there's so much talent there. Don't get me wrong. But there are probably boys in academies who are as technically gifted as Myles Lewis-Skelly. But he has something else. He has something else. In the same way that a Rooney or a Bellingham did. Just this, and in the same way that maybe a Declan Rice. I spoke about that charisma, that capacity to be present, to influence games, to take responsibility. I think Myles Lewis-Skelly has that in spades. That's why he's been a captain through the academy. It's why, he will be a leader within this Arsenal team in the future, if not already. And it wasn't just the way he played, it was watching his interactions with his teammates, like debating with them at free kicks, giving them instructions, giving them advice. It's not normal. It's not normal to see that from a player who, it's not just his age, it's his inexperience. He's played so relatively little men's football. He's not been out on loan, Andrew.
I think that was his, it could be 29th or 30th first team appearance for Arsenal last year. 30 first team appearances. It's insane.
He's bossing against Real Madrid. He's scoring goals for England. It's and that's the thing. That's the thing that's partly so brilliant about this team, that we have this combination of expensively acquired elite talent, and then these guys who have come for nothing or next to nothing, who come through the academy, who the fans identify with so strongly. I honestly, it was a performance that lifted you out of your seat. It really was, and what he's done this season has been sensational, I think.
Yeah, no two ways about it. And, there's been a lot of talk about him, a lot of discussion of him. Some of it not great, but ultimately I think what he deserves is recognition for what he does on the pitch, week in, week out for Arsenal. And I think we've had this discussion, haven't we, about that bravery he has, that courage he has on the ball, that confidence he has on the ball, maybe manifesting itself in a mistake or two along the way. But what you get in return for that is, I think, the moments that he will learn from to improve and do better going forward, but also the way it drives the team. Like the crowd, there were a couple of moments where he got away from tackles in midfield, and you could just hear the crowd lift, and things like that energize the fans around them, but also energize the team as well. And he is that kind of a player who brings positive energy to his team, and I thought it was just worth mentioning him as we wrap this up, because we do have to call time.
There's so many other performances, that deserve mention. Everyone was fantastic. I think, just to throw a few names out, what Jakub Kiwior produced in as I said after the Everton game, a different caliber of match is a big moment for him. I thought Thomas Partey was very, very good in midfield.
He was, yeah.
He just looked totally unfazed by the opposition, the occasion, and I guess that's the benefit of his experience, and plenty of experience, of course, of coming up against Madrid in derbies in the Spanish capital. I thought Jurrien Timber, was superb. William Saliba, in the absence of Gabriel, you're looking for him to step up. I thought he was composed, classy.
You could go through front to back, couldn't you?
You could go front to back.
Even Raya, who didn't have a huge amount to do, there were a couple of moments where, his anticipation, coming for crosses, claiming those balls into the box to just sort of snuff out any sort of second ball danger, really, really good as well. I think
subs were first class. I mean, I thought, Trossard worked really hard when he came on. Kieran Tierney, it's becoming a sort of customary cameo for him. I suspect we'll see him at the Bernabeu in some way, shape or form during that 90 minutes or longer. Hopefully just 90 minutes. But yeah, they all deserve credit, as do the fans who played their parts.
Yeah, a hugely enjoyable night, and one I think that you don't have to just enjoy on the night. If you're listening to this, I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode. There's loads out there. There's going to be loads out there. There's so much content. I don't know what you're going to do, James. I'm going to try and troll through a lot of the stuff I missed, some of the post-game interviews, the CBS stuff, Thierry Henry.
There's some great stuff, actually. Yeah. The Thierry Henry stuff's really good. His post-match with Declan Rice.
Yeah, that's what I've got lined up,
Yeah, good stuff with Mika Richards, who had bigged up Declan Rice before the game, and as you'll discover when you watch it, was very much enjoyed his goals. Mikel Arteta's press conference is well worth a watch. He's very good at sort of contextualising the result and what it means to the club. But yeah, soak it all up, guys. It's basking time, right?
Sure is.
For a week at least, and then Madrid awaits, and I can't wait. I'm going to be out there.
Oh, lucky you.
It's the lucky few of us who are. We might see something really special, and we've got real reason to believe, not just that we can get past Madrid, that perhaps even that we could go even further.
Yeah, who knows? And lucky I'm over for the actual glamour tie this weekend against Brentford. So
that's the big one. Listen, Nathan Butler-Oyedeji, your time is now.
At last. We've been calling for that for weeks on this podcast. It's about time they listen.
I want to see none of these players on Saturday. I'm sorry to say, Andrew. I hope it's the Raheem Sterling show.
Who's this guy, Steve? I've never heard of him.
Turns out, Andrew, they're flying you into play.
Okay, listen, be kind on me in the player ratings, guys. Don't go to town. My pace is not what it was, unfortunately.
Well, there you go. I'm glad we could squeeze this in.
For sure.
Would have been remiss, I think, to not.
It would have been. Apologies, we couldn't do the full Arsecast Extra with the questions and everything else, but we will do one of those for you on Monday.
I have a feeling there may be some questions about the Real Madrid tie.
Do you think?
In that pod as well. Just a feeling.
All right, listen, I'm gonna stay here for a couple of minutes and just round out this podcast with a little message about our Patreon, our charity drive for April. But for now, we'll leave it there. James, thank you very much as always.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed to James, and I hope you did enjoy that half an Arsecast Extra. Fuck off. Who's fucking angle grinding? Trying to record here. Do they not know? I have to close my window. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Why wouldn't you enjoy reliving that incredible win last night over Real Madrid, one of the great nights in Arsenal's European history at Highbury or the Emirates? Just a brilliant, brilliant night, a huge occasion, a performance to match, and look, who doesn't enjoy beating Real Madrid 3-0? You want to be some fucking weirdo if you're an Arsenal fan, you didn't enjoy that, that's all I'm saying. Right, I did want to talk to you about our Patreon. For the month of April, we are going to donate every single penny that we make from Patreon to good causes. We're going to help people in North London, in Ireland, and all around the world by making donations to the Arsenal Foundation, to UNICEF, to the Islington Food Bank, and to Oscar's Kids Ireland, who help kids and families dealing with cancer. If you want to help, just sign up to our Patreon. You don't have to stay for any longer than a month. Just know that for the month of April, your subscription is going to go and help those really good causes. You get instant access to all the content that we have on Patreon, including on Friday, we'll have a preview podcast for our game against Brentford at the weekend, the glamour game against Brentford at the weekend. Loads more besides. So if you've got $6 this month to spare and you want to get some extra content and you want to help those good causes, go to patreon.com/Arseblog. That's patreon.com/Arseblog. You can sign up there, and we thank you in advance, and we also thank all of our existing Patreon members for their continued support, which enables us to do things like this, to give a bit back to the world at a time when it seems like there's no end to people being terrible to each other. Let's try and be good to each other. So that's what we're trying to do. Right, I'm going to leave it there. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much as always for being with us. You can join myself and James, as I said, on Monday for an Arsecast Extra preview podcast on Patreon on Friday. For now, take it easy, folks, and we will catch you on the next one.